A High Court judge rules the Express Rail Link co-location ordinance is consistent with the Basic Law. In the UK, Theresa May survives a no-confidence vote of Tory MPs.
Hello and welcome to TVB News. British Prime Minister Theresa May survived a political crisis over her Brexit deal as she won a no-confidence vote by Conservative lawmakers. But it came at a steep price as she promised not to run for re-election in 2022. Alan Buckner has the story.
The result of the ballot held this evening is that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
May's margin of victory, 200 votes to 117, leaves her a weakened leader who has lost a big chunk of her party over her handling of Britain's exit from the European Union.
This has been a long and challenging day, but at the end of it, I'm pleased to have received the backing of my colleagues in tonight's ballot. Whilst I'm grateful for that support, a significant number of colleagues did cast a vote against me, and I've listened to what they said.
But there are now growing calls for May to resign over her handling of Brexit.
The misunderstanding of the mood in the country and within the party, and their failure to understand where the country is and what the country expects in terms of delivering Brexit, means that somebody else ought to try to deliver Brexit because the Prime Minister is not succeeding, and this vote shows that.
Nearly 40% of those who know her best, her own MPs, have voted to say they have no confidence in her as Prime Minister. In negotiations, what's really important is your credibility as a negotiator and your negotiating strength. Theresa May has no negotiating credibility left.
On Monday, May postponed a vote to approve the divorce, realizing it would almost certainly be defeated. She is now back meeting with leaders of the EU, hoping to win concessions and assurances to the Brexit deal before bringing it back to Parliament on or before January 21st. The UK's departure from the EU is due on March 29th. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
Here at home, the government won a legal battle today after the High Court ruled the Express Rail Link co-location ordinance is consistent with the Basic Law. This after 5 judicial review applicants challenged the law as unconstitutional. Christina with details.
The applicants, including former lawmaker Leung Kwok-hong, were hoping to challenge the Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Kong Express Rail Link co-location ordinance. It allows mainland Chinese officials to exercise national laws at the mainland ports area of a high-speed train station located in the heart of Hong Kong. In his judgment, Justice Anderson Chia ruled that the ordinance is consistent with the Basic Law. He said that the establishment of the mainland port area and other arrangements are a manifestation of the exercise of a high degree of autonomy of Hong Kong. It also recognized the 2 distinct and separate systems being practiced in Hong Kong and the mainland. Such arrangements is beneficial to the overall interests of Hong Kong. Lawyers of the applicants argue that, given the exclusivity of the Basic Law, the National People's Congress and its standing committee cannot make regulations which are legally binding on the city outside the framework of the Basic Law. The judge disagreed and added that under the Chinese constitution, the NPCSC has the power to decide whether a matter is compliant with the Basic Law. The NPCSC may exercise such supervisory power by means of issuing decisions. The decision also has legal effect and is binding on governmental authorities on mainland China and the Hong Kong SAR. Citing previous cases, the judge pointed out that the city's courts have no power to determine whether the NPCSC decision is invalid under Hong Kong laws. Ousted lawmaker Leung Kwok-hong said the case is a step backward for the city.
It's like a mess. What they have told the Hong Kong government and their statement is very simple. Listen to me. It's not even an interpretation, it's an order.
Leung is planning to appeal against the judgment. Christy Leung, TVB News.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross expressed cautious optimism on the topic of trade talks with China, despite tension over the arrest of Huawei's CFO in Canada at the request of the U.S. US President Donald Trump expressed a willingness to step in on the case if it would help to strike a deal.
If the president's going to step in and relieve China of any burden anytime one of their companies violates sanctions, do our sanctions mean anything?
Well, I think you're drawing a lot of conclusions from a potential decision that he has yet to make. Let's see what he actually decides. Let's see where we go from there.
Last time he said he was going to do this, he did it.
Last time, President Xi called him and asked him to do it as a personal favor. He made that very clear. That doesn't necessarily mean that's a precedent for all time.
U.S. President Donald Trump's former personal lawyer has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for violating campaign finance laws during the 2016 presidential election. Michael Cohen was charged with paying adult film actress Stormy Daniels $130,000 US and arranged a $150,000 payment to former Playboy model Karen McDougal just before the November 2016 election. The 52-year-old said in a guilty plea in August that he was directed by Trump to make the payments. The hush money was a bid to buy the women's silence after their past relationships with Trump, who denies the affairs. Cohen was also sentenced for lying to Congress about special counsel Robert Mueller's probe into Russian collusion in the 2016 election. Cohen told the judge it was blind loyalty that led him to cover up for Trump and that he was ready to spill the president's dirty deeds. Lawyers for Daniels say Cohen has got what he deserves.
Michael Cohen is neither a hero nor a patriot. He lied for months on end about his criminal conduct and the role of the President of the United States. His choice, time and time again, was to degrade my client, seek to intimidate her, call her and me liars, and seek to degrade the office of the presidency of the United States by seeking to buy effectively an election. This is an outrage.
The manhunt continues in France for the man suspected of killing 3 people and wounding about a dozen others in a shooting spree in Strasbourg. 29-year-old Sherif Shikat is described as a career criminal with dozens of convictions in France, Germany and Switzerland. Witnesses say he shouted "God is great" in Arabic as he launched his attack in a Christmas marketplace. An investigation has been opened into alleged murder with terrorist intent and suspected ties to terrorist networks. France raised its security threat to the highest alert level and strengthened controls on its border with Germany.
Still ahead on tonight's news. The 81st anniversary of the start of the Nanjing Massacre. Water seepage problems at the Central Wanchai Bypass Tunnel. And a self-service library station in Jimsachoi.
滋味係味蕾嘅感情，食物係味覺嘅語言。捉住呢隻味道，俾佢同味覺溝通。板長壽司美味在握，油金魚壽司系列5款滋味5種享受，期間限定，依家8蚊就食到啦。
Welcome back to TVB News. It's been 81 years, but thousands still haven't forgotten about the Nanjing Massacre. An estimated 300,000 Chinese were killed in Nanjing in late 1937 after Japanese invasion forces took the then capital city of China. Nearly 10,000 attended a ceremony in Nanjing today to remember those killed by Japanese troops in the weeks immediately after the fall of the city. Among the participants, 10 survivors of the massacre. Wang Chen, vice chairman of the National People's Congress Standing Committee, stressed the importance of peace and cooperation with neighboring Japan. The anniversary is now an official day of remembrance marked in Hong Kong as well. This morning, Chief Executive Carrie Lam led officials to pay respects to those who perished during the Japanese invasion.
The Social Welfare Department is under fire from the Ombudsman for failing to supervise services provided by elderly homes. The watchdog says even though the department issued more than 1,000 warnings between 2014 and 2017, there were few prosecutions and not a single case of a license being revoked. Caleb Leung has more.
Back in 2015, an elderly home made headlines for leaving its residents naked in open air as they waited on a podium to take a shower. The elderly home later closed down after the Social Welfare Department refused to renew its license. Despite multiple violations at different nursing homes, the Ombudsman said records show only one elderly home was denied a license renewal over the past 4 years.
Some elderly homes are repeatedly doing something wrong, which is against the law. We do think that social welfare departments should take early action to at least to prosecute those elderly homes so as to give sufficient deterrent effect.
From 2014 to 17, the department issued more than 1,000 warnings and directions for improvement. But there were only 16 prosecution cases that led to convictions. The conviction figure went up to 23 in the year 2017 to 18, which the Ombudsman thinks is still a low number. She also called the existing ordinance and regulation that established the licensing scheme outdated. Various offenses are currently not indictable through the ordinance and regulation, such as the improper use of restraints.
The Ombudsman also asked the Social Welfare Department to provide more information, such as decisions on refusals to renew licenses, which are currently not available on its website.
The Ombudsman also slammed the government for its Chinese medicine regulation. This includes allowing Chinese medicine to be sold as health products just by adding some non-Chinese medicine ingredients to avoid the registration requirement. The government has promised to follow up on the matter. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Defendants in the Occupy movement trial have finished presenting their closing speeches today. All of them denied charges related to public nuisance for their involvement. Activist Tommy Cheung stressed that he was only calling on people to take part in the demonstrations at the end of September 4 years ago. Former student leader Lee Sim-chung said there was no evidence to show the use of tear gas by officers at the time was appropriate. The hearing will continue tomorrow morning when the prosecution will make their responses based on some legal points.
The Central Wan Chai bypass is slated to open in the coming months, but the government is admitting there are water seepage problems in the tunnel. During a meeting at the Central and Western District Council, officials said limited water seepage is acceptable given its construction method, but officials say remedial works are being put in place. They didn't reveal the number of locations affected. They believe the problem will not delay the construction progress. The project started 9 years ago. It costs about $36 billion.
Another self-service library entered service today as part of a $7.8 million government program. Keno Chu checked out the facility, which is open 24 hours a day.
Good news for book lovers. From today, you will be able to enjoy this self-service library station tucked away in a corner outside the Cultural Center in Tsim Sha Tsui. The new facility allows users to borrow, return, make due payments, and even collect reserved library materials. Look closer and you might find a few upgrades compared with an existing one in Sai Wan Ho.
We have a bigger screen for the catalog, and we enhance the catalog functions. We also have strengthened the mechanical parts. We also can use the second generation EID.
Special thoughts have been put into its architectural design too.
This glass actually echoes the triangulated columns in the cultural center. We have used fluted glass to increase the transparency.
While the station is open 24 hours a day, it has only around 300 books.
I think the machine may not have so much book for me to choose. I would rather to go to library rather than the machine.
Because it's more convenient, like I can just pick out any book I want.
If you see a book you'd like to borrow, simply use your ID or library card to log in and pick your preferred copy. The book is then ready in around a minute. Authorities plan to build a third self-service library station outside the East Rail's Tai Wai station next year. Kana Chu, TVB News.
And that's the news.